Hey everyone, I'm Allison Morris. You are watching NBC News Now. Flags at half staff at the Capitol today. D.C. mourning the loss of police officer Brian Sicknick, who died Thursday after he was injured by protesters during Wednesday's riots. The FBI and D.C. Metro Police now launching a federal investigation into Sicknick's death, while the Justice Department says 13 rioters are now charged in federal court, including 60-year-old Richard Barnett. You remember him. He was the guy photographed sitting at Speaker Pelosi's desk. Also charged, West Virginia state lawmaker Derek Evans, who live streamed himself storming the Capitol. Both of them charged with entering restricted grounds. The Justice Department also announcing today they do not expect to charge any speakers from Wednesday's Trump rally, focusing instead on the people who committed criminal acts inside the Capitol. A search the DOJ says could last all year. Meanwhile, two Senate committees say they will hold bipartisan hearings to try and answer a question that has been asked over and over again since the deadly attacks. What security failures allowed a violent mob to breach one of the most protected buildings in the country? Colorado Congressman Jason Crow comparing the chaos at the Capitol to being in Afghanistan.
What I felt in the Capitol behind us is something that I haven't felt since I was in Afghanistan as an Army Ranger. And to think that as a member of Congress in 2021 in the U.S. Capitol on the House floor that I was preparing to fight my way out of the People's House against a mob is just beyond troubling.
Let's bring in NBC News national security correspondent Ken Dilanian and NBC News investigations correspondent Tom Winter. Ken, Tom, thank you both for being here. Tom, the Justice Department says 13 people have been charged in federal court, about 40 charged in Superior Court. What can you tell us about the latest charges?
Right. So some of the charges that are starting to come in reflect us on the federal side, at least. Some people that were initially arrested on state charges that are now going federal because they broke federal laws, and the penalties sometimes can be stiffer for that. Some of these are people that have yet to been arrested, but have been arrested today, and they're arrested in their home states. One of those people you referred to before is Richard Barnett. He was taken into custody in Arkansas today, and he's going to be charged. He's the person who had his feet up in Speaker Pelosi's office. He faces charges tied to that. He faces charges for taking things from her office. You know, a lot of these people that have been charged here, Allison, have done a wonderful job of incriminating themselves. You look at the charging documents, it's essentially everything that they posted and all the interviews that they gave after the fact, things that they put on social media or others put on social media involving them. Yeah. So they've made it kind of easy. Those are some of the initial cases have been brought forward, but there's also been some other serious cases that have come to fruition here today, including one that involved 11 Molotov cocktails where the person told federal agents, according to the charging documents, that they melted styrofoam into gasoline. The effect that has is that if they were to light that and throw it, it kind of becomes a home-brewed napalm. That same individual, the person identified as Lonnie Kaufman, allegedly also had two unregistered firearms on him, two 9mm guns on him, and a M4 semi-automatic assault rifle in his car that police allegedly found. For folks that aren't familiar or want to know what an M4 looks like, it's the same exact assault rifle that the NYPD's heavily trained and heavily armed heavy weapons teams that they have all over the city that they have on their person and that they patrol in. So that was a significant amount of firepower. The one thing Kaufman's complaint doesn't say, though, Allison, is whether or not he brought that into the Capitol. It doesn't say that he did. So obviously, a lot of concerning charges here, and based on what we got today from the FBI and prosecutors, we should expect a lot more.
Yeah, you're talking about some really serious weapons and bombs there, to be quite frank. Tom, law enforcement's also asking the public to help them identify some of these rioters. Do we know what kind of tips are coming in and if any of those are panning out?
Well, it's voluminous at this point. I mean, the FBI had 4,000 tips through yesterday. It certainly has grown since then. They've put this out today. As you said, Allison, same with the D.C. Metro Police, who have received almost 3 times as many tips. So I think when you look at the totality of this, they're getting a lot of information. I know a lot of people, I've heard it on Twitter, say, well, why isn't the FBI just looking at these images? Why aren't they just watching News Now or MSNBC? Why aren't they just on on Twitter, you know, based on my experience in federal investigations in the past, I remember the Boston Marathon bombing case, there was a lot of imagery that was shared there. But when people started to upload their pictures to the FBI and their videos to the FBI, they got so much more information. And also, it allows them to engage with people and start to ask them questions and get a fuller sense of what went on. So it's really important work, and I'm sure we'll see the results of that in future charges and future arrests.
Yeah, important work indeed. Ken, you are reporting that one federal law enforcement official described the Capitol riots as, quote, the darkest day since 9/11. What do we know so far about the security failures that happened here?
Allison, it looks like the groundwork was laid for those failures a few days before the incident, when the Capitol Police essentially rejected any help from the Pentagon or from federal law enforcement agencies like the FBI and DHS, and made clear that they thought they had this. And then the chief of the Capitol Police, which is a 2,000-member force that protects the Capitol and members of Congress, he told senior members of Congress that there was no way that these demonstrators were going to get anywhere close to the Capitol. And then the Capitol Police failed by essentially failing to establish a defensive perimeter around the Capitol, deploying their men thinly, men and women, in regular uniforms, not in riot gear, and so that they were no match for this concerted group of rioters who ended up striking police officers with lead pipes, who used pepper spray, who overran this deployment of Capitol Police officers. But it goes beyond that, Allison, because there was an hour period of time, lawmakers told us, before the rioters breached the building, when they had approached the Capitol steps, where they were places they should not have been, the Capitol Police did not call for help. And by the time they did call for help, the rioters were rampaging through the Capitol. And there are some questions about why it took so long for National Guard and FBI tactical teams and DHS law enforcement to get there. But ultimately, they did get there, and the D.C. police also arrived and ejected these people from the building. But the Capitol Police was so overwhelmed, they barely made any arrests. We saw images of people, them essentially escorting some of these rioters out of the building, and that's why they're having now to look at social media and make these arrests, Allison.
Ken, you also wrote that one defense official said, quote, there was no indication of significant violent protests ahead of Wednesday. But to talk plainly here, give me a break. Earlier this week, NBC News reported far-right forums full of threats of violence ahead of this rally. How could there possibly be such a disconnect here?
This is absolutely inexplicable, Allison. I don't have a good answer for you on this. The FBI told our Pete Williams today that they saw no evidence that there was anything but peaceful protest brewing. That just simply is belied by the record. As you point out, our own NBC News reporters who are looking at social media, looking at 8chan, looking at Facebook, are seeing explicit threats by people who say they want to occupy the Capitol, and they are threatening violence. My analysis here, having covered intelligence for many years, is that no agency looks at right-wing extremist threat information the way the CIA and other agencies look at Islamic extremist terrorist threats. And that's got to change, because the threat picture has absolutely changed, and this incident is a great example of it. And there was an intelligence failure here, and I think that story has yet to be told, and it will be in the days going forward, Allison.
Yeah, for sure. Tom, something that kind of flew under the radar, we talked about it, but it didn't get quite a lot of attention. Two suspected pipe bombs left near the RNC and DNC headquarters. What is the latest on those investigations? What do we know about that?
Right, Allison. So let's start with what we're looking at here, which is the Seeking Information poster that the FBI put out last night. Pretty big reward attached to it, $50,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the individual that the FBI says that we're looking at there on the screen is the person responsible for leaving behind those pipe bombs. So they're taking a look at it. They appear to have been functional devices, or at least functional enough that they could have gone off, certainly had all the right type of ingredients. So they're certainly interested in this. What was the person's motivations for leaving them behind? Who are they? Where are they? That's obviously a crime and somebody that they want to get their hands on. You know, to some of the things you were talking about with Ken, the right-wing extremism is not going away. And if this person is involved in it, what could they be doing next? And so I think there's a real concern, and that's why the reward is so high.
Ken, there are a lot of conspiracy theories on social media claiming that members of Antifa stormed the Capitol. Have law enforcement officials or anyone responded to those claims?
Yes, the FBI said there's no evidence, no indication that Antifa was involved in this riot. And in fact, these rumors seem to have stemmed from an inaccurate Washington Times story that said that a facial recognition company had flagged some pictures that linked back to Antifa. That seemed to have been essentially confused journalism. The company has refuted that story, and the Times took the story down. And so, but that didn't stop right-wing media from getting a lot of traction. And I saw a lot of politicians and right-wing journalists talking about the possibility that Antifa was there. There's no evidence they were there.
Tom, a congressional aide says a laptop was stolen from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's conference room. We also reported earlier this week that rioters stole a laptop from Senator Jeff Merkley. Do we have any idea or any sense if this was a coordinated attempt to try to steal information from members of Congress?
I think it's too soon to say, Allison, whether or not there was some sort of a coordinated effort. Yeah. I know the night that this violent riot occurred Wednesday night, we raised, based on law enforcement officials that we spoke with, myself and my colleague Andrew Blankstein, the idea that foreign intelligence officers could somehow get their way into this mob and throng of people that took over the Capitol. That's something that has occurred in history. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that would have occurred as well. So we're going to have to see where this goes. I think it's too soon in the investigation. It's our understanding that those laptops have a significant amount of security on them that should perhaps alert the Capitol that those laptops could be in use or accessing the internet or could need a significant amount of credentials to be accessed. But if we've learned anything about computers over the last 4, 5, 10 years, nothing is exactly foolproof. So I think there's probably a lot of interest in being able to get those devices back in something that I think people might have thought was a good souvenir. If that's the reason why they took them, might be thinking differently soon, Allison.
Yeah. Ken, you alluded to this before. I want to talk about it a little bit more. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan says that he was repeatedly denied permission to send in his National Guard. Take a listen to what he said here.
Well, none of us really spoke to the Secretary of Defense, but we were repeatedly, General Gowan was repeatedly being told by the National Guard at the national level that we did not have authorization. I was actually on the phone with Leader Hoyer, who was pleading with us to send the Guard. He was yelling across the room to Schumer, and they were back and forth saying, we do have the authorization. And I'm saying, I'm telling you, we do not have the authorization.
Ken, today Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy released a statement saying that he did not speak to Governor Hogan until 4:40 p.m. That was more than 2 hours after rioters first breached the Capitol, after Mike Pence had to be taken out of the building. Do we have any idea why it took so long for the Army to authorize Maryland's National Guard to come in and help when it was so obvious that help was needed?
We don't have a clear idea, Allison. There's a lot of finger pointing going on here and different stories coming out of the Pentagon, coming out of Washington, D.C., and coming out of these governors' offices. Whether the Pentagon was actually denying the help or whether they were saying it's not good optics to have armed soldiers going into the Capitol, which is arguably the case. But as my friend Tom Winter has pointed out, we should keep in mind here that ultimately this was a law enforcement problem. It would have been nice to have the National Guard there sooner, but it would have been better to have FBI tactical units, people who are trained in crowd control, people who do this for a living get there sooner, and they weren't there either. So it's an interesting debate about why the National Guard wasn't sent in. But my first question is, where was the FBI, DHS, and other police forces? Yeah. Where were the mutual aid agreements? Why didn't the Capitol Police call them in sooner? Allison.
Absolutely. Ken and Tom, thank you both so much. Great reporting. Thank you for helping to answer the questions that so many of us have. I know we'll be talking to you again next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
You bet.
More than 230 lawmakers now support removing President Trump from office. The majority of them are in the House, 190 Democrats and just 1 Republican. House Majority Whip James Clyburn says the president needs to be impeached.
Impeachment will give him exactly what he wants. something that's never been done by any other president before, and that is the first president in the history of the country to be impeached twice. Now, I think the American people have seen enough, and they are ready for us to do the job of impeaching this man.
NBC News correspondent Leanne Caldwell is on the Hill, of course. Leanne, Congressman Clyburn was one of the House Democrats on a call with Speaker Pelosi today. The Assistant House Speaker said this morning the House will move forward with impeachment as early as next week. And you're hearing articles could be introduced Monday. Tell us more.
Yeah, 3 members of Congress, David Cicilline, Ted Lieu, and Jamie Raskin, are taking the lead on the impeachment process, and they are introducing their articles on Monday. So they say, we obtained a copy of the draft article. It's just one. It's charging the president with inciting an insurrection, which is the title of the article. Pretty somber stuff that's written in there. And the Speaker has not necessarily committed yet to holding a vote on these articles, but she has given so many indications that she is willing to move forward. She's willing to move forward if the president himself does not resign, and if the vice president, Mike Pence, does not start the process in invoking the 25th Amendment. She is putting it on the Republican Party first to act. And if not, she is saying that they will move forward with these articles of impeachment, Allison.
Leanne, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said today that impeaching Trump again will only divide our country more. Where do other top Republicans, I'm thinking Mitch McConnell, where do they stand here?
Yeah, Mitch McConnell is always the one we want to know what he thinks. And the problem with Mitch McConnell is he never tells anyone what he thinks. Even members of his leadership team, he keeps his cards very close to his vest. But we are hearing the position of McCarthy, which is a concern that if they move forward with these articles of impeachment, that it's just going to incite more violence. But then there are more members who are speaking out publicly that perhaps this is the only way to move forward. Senator Ben Sasse said that's something that he would consider. And then just in the last few moments, local Alaska media published an interview with Senator Lisa Murkowski, and she said that the president needs to get out of office now. She said that what he did was unacceptable. It was just a blistering interview of the president. So that feeling and emotion is present among Republicans. It's just that I don't know if it's enough to have the numbers to persuade McConnell to move quickly should he receive these articles of impeachment, Allison.
Leanne, Nancy Pelosi spoke with the top general in the country about blocking President Trump's access to the nuclear codes. That is a pretty shocking step to take. What do we know about that call and the response from the Pentagon?
Yeah, so Pelosi said in the call that the answer to that was that General Miley said that there are safeguards in place to protect against an unfit president from launching nuclear weapons. We just received, our colleague Moshe Gaines just received a statement from the Pentagon saying, didn't admit directly to saying those exact words, but said that there was a phone call with Speaker Pelosi and he answered her concerns. So those are real concerns up here. Pelosi hinted at them yesterday at her press conference. She said them publicly in a Dear Colleague to her members today, which is also released to the press. So Pelosi is just, top aide is telling us that she is furious and she is nervous about what this president will do in just 11 days left in his term.
He's not the only person that some folks are looking to get rid of. Senator Patty Murray, the number 3 Senate Democrat, called on Senators Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz to resign for objecting to the Electoral College count after the Capitol riots. She's not the first to make that call. Is there any chance here, Leanne, that they could be forced out of Congress?
That would be really hard. There is a lot of frustration. That's a understatement with Josh Hawley and Senator Cruz among the Senate, their colleagues, not just Democrats, but Republicans too. There's a lot of talk about they don't know how they recover from this politically, whether they retire or resign or not, or stay in office. They have a very difficult political future, they think. But in the House, there's similar things as well. Members are talking about censoring other members, Republicans, who they say had a role in what happened on January 6th. So, you know, it's going to be up to Josh Hawley if he resigns, obviously. Vice President Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden, said the best way to get rid of Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley is to beat them in the next election. Allison.
Yeah, and it does not seem like they are too interested in resigning, Leanne, so that probably is a more reasonable option. Leanne Caldwell, Leanne, I just can't thank you enough. I know it has been a very, very difficult and long week. We are so thankful to you and the entire Cap Hill team for your incredible reporting and just quite honestly, your bravery. What a scary couple of days you guys had, particularly Wednesday, and we're just so glad you're okay.
Thanks, Allison. I just want to give one shout out, of course, to our team, but also to our crews as well, our camera guys, our audio tech. Yes. Jocko right behind me, who was here for 27 hours straight. So,
oh my God.
Yes, it was a huge team effort. And so thank you so much.
Yeah, our love and thanks to all of those guys. Even when you were feeling scared or in danger, you guys never stopped doing your job, and you did a terrific one. Thank you to you and the crews. Please send them all our best.
Of course. Thank you.
President-elect Joe Biden has picked his cabinet. Today, he introduced the rest of his economic team, and he also took questions from reporters about whether he supports Congress's push to impeach the president.
I'm focused on the virus, the vaccine, and economic growth. What the Congress decides to do is for them to decide. But I'm going to have to, and they're going to have to be ready to hit the ground running.
NBC News political reporter Ali Vitale joining me now from Wilmington, Delaware. Ali, Biden strongly condemned Wednesday's mob attack at the Capitol, but today kind of sidestepped that question of impeachment. Take us through his approach. What's he doing here?
That's exactly right, Allison. When he was asked if he backed these mounting Democratic efforts to impeach President Trump, he sidestepped in saying that it doesn't matter what his personal view on President Trump is, while also reminding that he has said repeatedly he doesn't believe Trump is fit for office. Instead, he said this is something that Congress had to decide on themselves. If they thought that it was fit for President Trump to be impeached again in Congress, then they should do that. But he wasn't weighing in any way. I think it's important to remember here that Biden has long said, both before he was actually elected and since he's been doing this transition into power, that this is a time that the country needs to heal. What happened this week only makes that more pressing, and it shows you the way that Biden wants to approach that. He offered harsh words for the rioters. He continued to say that he thought that it was egregious seeing what happened on the Capitol. But at the same time, he's not wading into these divisive issues and partisan issues. Instead, he's trying to keep his eyes focused ahead. And I thought that warning that he gave at the end there was really interesting, because as he was talking at this press conference, he consistently hearkened back to the crises that he's focused on, including coronavirus, the dissemination of the vaccine, as well as getting the economy back on track. And basically, you heard him there at the end saying that if Congress wants to move forward on impeachment, they can do that, but they better be ready to hit the ground running on these other things, because Biden wants to get to a stimulus package pretty immediately once he's inaugurated.
Ali, Biden also blamed some lawmakers for promoting the lie that the election was stolen. What did he say on that?
Yeah. Well, he was asked specifically about Senators Cruz and Hawley, and instead of saying that they should resign, which Leanne pointed out is a personal decision for them, and I don't think that that's something that they would do, Biden said, though, that it would be better for them to just be flatly beaten the next time that they're on the ballot. We've seen, at least in Missouri, some local politicians there that are pretty powerful saying that they regret mentoring Josh Hawley. I actually covered his race there, and at that point, he was an establishment Republican running against then Senator Claire McCaskill, someone who was viewed as very politically ambitious. And it's really hard to disentangle that view of him with what we saw from him in the last few days, backing these things and sowing doubt about the election results. But Biden was saying that it's better to beat them at the ballot box, and also making the distinction about the role that people like Cruz and Hawley played in contrast to President Trump. Listen.
I was pleased to hear some of the more prominent Republicans say to me that the Ted Cruzes of the world are as responsible in terms of people believing the lies as, not as responsible, but similarly responsible like Trump. But they didn't say, go to the Capitol, I'll be with you, follow. That's a different story.
And look, I'm sure others have made this point, but you cannot look at what Cruz and Hawley did these last few days without taking it in the larger context that both of these men have presidential aspirations. They are both people that are widely talked about as wanting to run for president in 2024. And they have, in various reelection battles, ridden the Trump wave to get reelected. And I think that they would like to be heir apparents to the Trump part of the Republican Party, which, even though Trump is technically going out of office, his power is not going to wane over that group of people. And so when you consider Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley over the course of the next few days, weeks, and then years, you have to consider this baldly political move that really endangered and showed how much democracy can bend, but thankfully not break.
Allie, let's talk about Biden's economic picks today. Who are they and how will they help get this economy back on track?
Well, Allison, within this group of economic picks, we're seeing Biden finish fleshing out his cabinet. We are at the end now of the rollout events that we've become so accustomed to here in Wilmington. And instead, you're starting to see the beginnings of a pressure campaign to make sure that at least some of these nominees will be confirmed by the time that Biden is inaugurated. You heard him say today that he specifically wants to see his Department of State, Treasury, Homeland Security, and Defense at least get confirmation hearings set on the board, if not be confirmed by 12 days from now when he's inaugurated. Only one of those positions, the only one of all the cabinet picks that Biden has so far laid out, has a date on the calendar right now, which is the day before the election for the confirmation hearing of Lloyd Austin, who's the nominee for the Department of Defense. By not having any of these confirmation hearings set, part of it is because of the confusion that was still left before those two Georgia races were decided. But really what it means is that Biden might not be afforded the same advantages that several of his predecessors, both Obama and Trump and presidents before them, have had, which is having cabinet members who are able to really hit the ground running because they've been confirmed before the inauguration or in the process of being confirmed before the inauguration. At this point, we just don't know if Biden's going to have anyone who's actually ready and confirmed to serve on the day that he is inaugurated. When you consider the steep climb ahead on things like the economic recession, the pandemic, even just disseminating the coronavirus vaccine, that's going to be really important to his success.
Absolutely. Ali Vitale with the latest from the Biden transition in Delaware. Thank you so much, my friend.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.